Rocío Sendra works at this bar in Buenos Aires to help pay her way through college. She's studying psychology, one of the most popular courses in Argentina and a favourite topic of conversation.
Usually people are not ashamed of telling another person. It's like, oh yeah, my therapist said this, or my psychologist recommended this. It's something that usually comes up in a conversation.
Like many people in this country, Rocío has also gone to therapy at different times in her life.
The way I see psychology, for me, is it's like a box of tools. And for different problems, you have different tools.
Rocío is among many students hoping to practice psychology professionally. According to Buenos Aires University, Argentina has more psychologists per capita in the world, more than 3 times Finland and more than 6 times the United States. Argentina is a country largely built on European immigration. It has a sizable Jewish community and an educated population. And this in part explains how and why the ideas of Sigmund Freud and Jacques Lacan filtered through to an intellectual middle class and created a boom in psychology in the 1960s. Coinciding with the trend toward more psychologists, Argentina is also a country synonymous with a faltering economy. In 2001, a sovereign debt default and a social and political crisis led Argentines to protest and demand the political class must quit.
Psychoanalysts as the, I would say, most important kind of public intellectuals. I mean, they were consulted all the time by the press, by the TV. All the discourses dealing with society were sort of losing legitimacy. Nobody would pay attention to what economists would say or to what sociologists, because they were all wrong. Who was the public intellectual who emerged? Well, the psychoanalyst. That was interesting.
The financial crash of the early 2000s is still on the mind of Lucia Rossi, the Vice Dean of the Psychology Faculty at the Buenos Aires University.
Es la crisis del 2000. Nosotros vivimos en crisis.
She says it's not that there was a crisis in 2001, but rather that Argentines live in crisis. Rossi says psychology expanded dramatically after the return to democracy and the end of the military dictatorship in the early 1980s.
There was a surge in the number of students after the transition to democracy. Everyone goes to study at universities. And what was the favorite course in democracy? Psychology.
Lecturer Graciela Peca says psychology is expanding in the workplace with broader job prospects than as practicing psychoanalysts. Psychologists are increasingly in demand in the courts.
La violencia familiar es un tema que está en auge.
Domestic violence is rising. In many situations, a judge may well call in psychologists to provide an evaluation and produce a report on someone's personality.
For the average Argentine, therapy remains expensive. Health insurance plans offer limited coverage. High inflation means therapy is something many choose to cut back on. Yet, psychotherapy's influence remains.
Psychoanalysis is still there as a cultural artifact, not necessarily as a therapy. It's part of the way in which at least the middle class see reality, if you want.
Despite the changes in how psychology is viewed and used, younger generations are still signing up by the thousands to study.
For me, the important thing about psychology, about going to therapy, is that you have someone you can talk to very honestly about your life, and that helps you to think about the things that you think are important. And it also helps you to ask questions about how you want to live your life.
So while their economy may be struggling, Argentines plan to stick with the therapy. Joel Richards, CGTN, Buenos Aires.